My dear friends, have you noticed how most of us believe that winning means proving our point? We enter every discussion not to be wise, but to be right. We crave the final word, even if it costs us our inner peace. But life, in its own gentle way, teaches that not every battle is won by speaking. Some victories bloom in silence. There was a time when I replied instantly to every opinion, every judgment, every criticism that came my way. Until one day, I realized something profound. The more I spoke, the less I understood. And the quieter I became, the more life started speaking to me. That day, I stopped talking just to be heard and began listening to grow. When you fall silent, not out of pride but out of awareness, something magical happens. You begin to hear the truths that noise conceals. And in that stillness, you find wisdom, peace, and strength. Silence is not weakness. My friends, it is power in its purest form. In a world where everyone wants to be noticed, the one who remains calm and quiet often becomes the one who's truly understood. People mistake silence for defeat. They think if you don't react, you've lost. But silence doesn't mean you've lost, it means you've risen above the need to prove yourself. There's a grace in holding back, a sacred strength in keeping calm while your mind is on fire. Real power is not in shouting louder, anyone can do that. It lies in staying still when everything around you tempts you to react. That takes maturity, awareness, and emotional intelligence. Have you ever observed the truly powerful souls, the ones whose presence alone commands respect? They don't speak much. They weigh their words like gold because they know once words are released, they can never be taken back. Silence gives them time to reflect, to understand, and to respond from wisdom, not from impulse. I remember a moment from my own life. Someone said something deeply hurtful to me. Every part of me wanted to reply, to defend, to justify, but a quiet voice within whispered, "Wait." So I stayed silent. A few days later, that very person came back and said, "I expected you to react, but you didn't." And that's when I realized silence had spoken for me. When you choose silence, you give others space to hear their own noise. You allow their conscience to echo louder than your voice ever could. Silence humbles. Silence heals. Silence teaches what words never can. It doesn't mean surrender. It means you're secure enough not to seek validation. It means you trust your truth so deeply, you don't need to announce it. Silence isn't about ignoring people, it's about preserving your peace. So the next time someone provokes you, pause. Let silence be your strength and peace your reply. Because power doesn't come from the loudest voice, but from the calmest heart. When you master that, my friends, you don't just win arguments, you win yourself. Silence, my friends, can heal what words often break. We believe that communication is the key to connection, and it is, but sometimes the most powerful communication happens in silence. Not the cold silence of pride or ego, but the warm silence of patience, understanding, and love. A silence that says, "I may not agree with you right now, but I still care." In most relationships, it's not the differences that cause distance, it's the reactions. It's not what we say that wounds others, but how we say it. Words spoken in anger, even if true, can leave scars that take years to heal. Sometimes, in our desire to fix everything immediately, we end up saying too much. We over-explain, we overreact, we over-talk. And the more we try to mend with words, the more tangled things become. Silence, on the other hand, gives space. It allows both hearts to breathe, to cool down, and to remember what truly matters. I once knew a couple who argued often. Both were kind, but both wanted to be right. Every disagreement became a verbal battlefield. Who could explain better? Who could justify faster? But one day, something changed. In the middle of an argument, the husband suddenly stopped speaking. He simply stayed quiet and listened. For the first time, the wife stopped shouting and started crying. That silence gave her permission to feel, not fight. It was no longer about winning, it became about understanding. From that day on, their arguments began to fade. They learned a sacred truth that sometimes the best way to fix a relationship is not through more words, but through patient silence filled with love. When you choose silence in love, you're not avoiding communication, you're deepening it. You're saying, I choose peace over pride, because not every moment demands a reply. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is listen, or even step back and allow the storm to settle. In silence, emotions soften, and when emotions soften, clarity returns. Only then can real communication begin, not from defense, but from understanding. We live in a world that often confuses silence with indifference. But the truth is, silence in relationships often takes far more strength than speaking. It takes restraint to stay calm when you're misunderstood. It takes maturity to remain gentle when someone else is angry. It takes wisdom to know that timing matters more than talking. The right words at the wrong time can still wound deeply. Silence, when chosen with awareness, gives you the gift of timing, the chance to say the right thing when the heart is ready to receive it. And in that sacred waiting, silence also teaches forgiveness. When you stop speaking for a moment, you start listening to your own heart. You realize that being right isn't as important as being kind. You begin to see the pain behind the other person's words, the fear behind their reaction, and that realization turns anger into empathy. You stop trying to win the argument and start trying to win the person back. That's how silence heals. It turns reaction into reflection. So the next time you find yourself caught in a heated moment, pause, breathe, say less, maybe even nothing at all. Let silence speak for you. Let love take a deep breath. Because when words fail, silence whispers gently, truthfully, and powerfully, reminding both hearts what truly matters. Not who was right, but what is worth protecting. And that, my dear friends, is the beauty of silence. It doesn't just end conflict, it restores connection. Silence, my friends, has a strange way of earning respect. It's ironic, isn't it? We grow up believing that respect is gained by speaking more, doing more, and proving more. But life, in its quiet wisdom, eventually teaches us something deeper. Real respect doesn't come through noise. It blossoms through composure. It's not the loudest person who commands the room, but the calmest soul who anchors it. Because silence never begs for attention. It simply is. Those who constantly talk often lose their impact. Their words, once powerful, turn into background noise. But those who pause, who reflect, who choose their words carefully, their voice carries weight. When they finally speak, everyone listens. Why? Because silence gives words value. It's like music. What makes a melody meaningful is not just the notes, but the spaces between them. The pause gives the sound its beauty. The same is true for us. The stillness between our words gives them depth. Think about the people you respect the most, the ones whose opinions you value, whose wisdom you wait to hear. They're rarely the ones who talk constantly. They're the ones who listen first, who observe patiently, and speak only when their words can serve. Their silence makes you curious. You find yourself wondering what they're thinking. And when they finally share their insight, every word lands with meaning, because it's not just noise, it's nourishment. There is immense power in restraint. In today's world, where everyone feels compelled to comment, argue, or display their intelligence both online and offline, choosing silence has become almost revolutionary. It shows a different kind of strength, one that doesn't depend on validation. It shows discipline. It shows mastery. It shows that you no longer need attention to feel significant. And that, my friends, earns respect, the kind that can't be demanded, only inspired. People naturally look up to those who have mastered themselves. And silence, if practiced with awareness, is the highest form of self-mastery. I once met a man whose peace could calm a storm. He spoke little, yet his presence filled the room. When he did speak, people listened with complete attention. After one such gathering, I asked him, "Why do you speak so little?" He smiled, his eyes filled with wisdom, and said, "Because I want my words to mean something. And for that, I must first learn to respect silence." That line stayed with me for years. Want to be respected? Respect silence first. When you practice silence, you give yourself the sacred space to think, to feel, and to understand. You move from reacting to responding. Your words gain precision. Your thoughts become profound. Your presence grows magnetic. Silence creates mystery, and mystery invites respect. People begin to notice you not because you're demanding attention, but because your calmness commands it effortlessly. Silence also guards your dignity. When you stop arguing with those who misunderstand you, you display emotional intelligence. Without uttering a word, you communicate that you value peace over approval. That kind of self-respect shifts how others treat you. They realize you're not easily provoked, not easily shaken. They sense that you move from depth, not impulse. Respect, my friends, is not born from loudness, it's born from values. When you choose silence instead of argument, patience instead of pride, understanding instead of ego, you earn something far more precious than victory. You earn admiration. People begin to trust you more. They don't come to you for gossip, they come for guidance. Because your silence tells them one thing clearly, that your words, when spoken, are worth waiting for. So let the world argue. Let others compete for attention. You don't have to enter the noise to be noticed. Stay calm, observe quietly, and when you do speak, speak with truth, thought, and purpose. That is how silence transforms into influence. That is how silence earns respect. Because in the end, it's not the one who shouts the loudest who's remembered, it's the one whose presence speaks even when their mouth doesn't. My dear friends, in this fast-paced world, where notifications never stop and conversations never truly end, silence has become one of the rarest luxuries. We are surrounded by sound, yet starving for stillness. We are constantly connected, yet deeply disconnected from ourselves. We wake up and reach for our phones before we reach for our thoughts. We scroll through the noise of others before we listen to the whispers of our own soul. And slowly, without realizing it, our inner voice fades away, not because it stopped speaking, but because we stopped listening. The greatest wisdom does not come from speaking more. It comes from being still enough to hear what life is quietly trying to tell you. Every silence carries a message if you are patient enough to listen. Stillness is not the absence of activity, it's the presence of clarity. When you sit quietly, without distractions, the dust of your mind begins to settle, and you start seeing life more clearly. Like muddy water that clears when left undisturbed, your inner world too becomes transparent when you stop stirring it with restlessness. I often say, silence is the bridge between confusion and clarity. When you stop arguing with the noise outside, you begin to hear the truth inside. Because that truth is always there, constant, gentle, guiding. It never shouts, it whispers. And that's why only the still can hear it. Think about nature. The forest doesn't rush. The river doesn't compete. The sun doesn't shout to shine brighter. They all move in harmony with stillness, and that's why their beauty touches us so deeply. In the same way, when your heart is quiet, your words gain power. When your mind is still, your actions gain purpose. And when your soul is calm, your presence itself becomes healing. But people often misunderstand stillness. They think it's inactivity. No, my friend, stillness is not sitting idle. It's choosing peace in the midst of chaos. It's learning to respond, not react. It's mastering the art of being centered when everything around you is pulling you apart. There's a beautiful line from the scriptures, "In quietness and trust shall be your strength." That means your strength doesn't come from how loud or fast you move, but from how deeply you trust and how calmly you stay anchored. When you are still, you start hearing your conscience clearly, that inner compass that knows what's right even when the world confuses you. You begin to recognize patterns in your life lessons repeating themselves because you never paused long enough to understand them. And slowly, silence becomes your teacher. It corrects you without criticism. It guides you without words. It reminds you that peace is not something you find, it's something you return to. I remember once walking along a quiet lakeside early in the morning. The surface of the water was so calm, it reflected the sky perfectly. Not a ripple, not a wave, just stillness. And it struck me, that's exactly what happens when the mind becomes calm. It reflects truth clearly. But when the mind is disturbed by constant thoughts and emotions, it distorts everything, just like ripples on the water distort the reflection of the sky. So when life feels confusing, don't rush to make decisions. Don't react in the heat of emotion. Instead, step back, breathe, be still. Let the waters of your mind settle. The right answer will always rise naturally from that stillness. Because stillness is not emptiness. It's fullness, full of awareness, full of understanding, full of divine presence. It's in silence that you meet yourself, not the noisy version that the world sees, but the real you beneath all roles, titles, and masks. And that moment, my friends, is sacred. Because once you meet yourself in stillness, you will never again feel lost in the crowd. You'll realize that peace is not found in a place, a possession, or a person. It's found in presence. So each day, take a few moments just to sit, not to think, not to plan, not to scroll, but to simply be. Let your mind breathe, let your soul speak, and let your heart listen. Because life's deepest truths are never shouted, they're always whispered. And only the still can hear them. In the end, remember this, you don't always need to have the loudest voice to be heard, or the fastest plan to succeed. Sometimes your calm presence speaks louder than any words, and your inner peace achieves more than your outer struggle ever could. So whenever you feel overwhelmed, pause, step into your silence, and listen, because even in your quiet moments, life is speaking, God is guiding, and your soul is gently whispering, you are exactly where you need to be. My friends, remember, silence is not an escape from life. It's a return to its essence. Listening is not passive. It's one of the most powerful actions of awareness. And resilience is not about hardening your heart. It's about softening it with wisdom. In every challenge, in every interaction, and in every quiet moment, life is offering you a choice to react or to reflect, to rush or to rest, to listen to noise or to truth. Choose the path of meaning. Choose the strength of stillness. Choose to listen deeply to others, to life, and most importantly, to your own soul. Because the one who listens truly lives.